Welcome to another edition of the Youth Roundtable 2025 series. My name is Masawi Ivan, and I'm privileged to be your host for the show this afternoon. With me is a panel of guild leaders, I should say excellencies. From my far left, is Honorable, His Excellency, Nkwanga Micheal, a Guidl President of the Uganda Institute of Communication and Technology. You're most welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
He's making his maiden appearance to the show, and it will always be a pleasure to always invite you to join us in issues pertaining national importance, but also seeing that we have a conversation around young people who basically you represent as a leader. To my immediate left is Honorable Her Excellency Shamim Akampurira, the Vice Guild President of King Caesar University. She has been to the show before. You're most welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, Shamim, we have been faced by a lot of issues concerning the recent jurisdiction by the Supreme Court on the status of finding the court-martial to be fit for purpose or not fit for purpose for trying civilians. As their judgment on the 31st of January, today we find ourselves in a state where the ruling party, that is the National Resistance Movement, via its caucus, has repealed sections of the UPDF Act that were found void and null for purpose for trying civilians. What do you pick of this first from the independence of the Supreme Court decisions? Is it should we interpret it as a fight for power between organs of government, or the executive in its way as an administrator has a right to say that it appeals such judgments?
Thank you so much. We can all see that this is a political matter, because we all know that the General Court Martial is not supposed to be trying civilians. That is how the matter actually went to the Supreme Court, and it gave its ruling, which is clear that the General Court Martial does not have the jurisdiction to try civilians. Now, we have all seen that even after giving that ruling, some civilians, Ugandan citizens, such as Dr. Chiza Besigye, Aaron Chiza, and many other political detainees are still in detention, and that is illegal, because when a Supreme Court ruling has given its clear view, it has been clear, it means that these people were supposed to be released with immediate effect, but that is not what was happening. And we also have to see the fact that they were detained on an issue like having arms, but to what percentage, how many civilians are tried daily for being found with firearms? We have issues of burglary, we have aggravated robbery every day. How many civilians have been tried in general court martials because of being found with, firearms? But we can all see that this is an issue because of the imbalances of the arms of government, and the Constitution of Uganda is clear. Each arm of government is supposed to be independent. So if the judiciary is exercising its power, the parliament is exercising its power, the executive is exercising its power independently, we wouldn't be having issues like this. Because we need to respect the law. The law is there to be respected. It is there to protect us, But something called human rights are inherent. They are not given to us by the state, The Constitution is just there to list them up. The law is just there to protect humans, but you're not supposed to, your right is not supposed to be violated, and the excuse is a certain law that was what? That was stated. So I feel like the right to habeas corpus, the right to like fair hearing, those are very, very important issues. And in my view, these civilians who are being detained should have been released a very long time ago. But it comes all with the imbalances of the arms of government. The executive has so much power that even when the judiciary has pronounced itself very clearly with the Supreme Court ruling, even when the Parliament has pronounced itself clearly, because the other day we saw the Speaker questioning the government, why are these people still, you know, held illegally? Why haven't you released them? But they have still not been released. Why? Because the executive has said so. Yeah. So it's an issue, and it is actually very tragic that this is happening, because there has to be some other type of way. If you're saying that you're trying to transfer the files, then release the people as you transfer the files, you know. Civilian courts are more than ready to just start trying these certain kind of cases. But that is not going to happen because there's been an order by the what? By the executive. So you also see the political interests that are in, because obviously this is a political matter. Yeah, we can all see that. And the fact that actually the NRM and members of parliament and the president had a meeting, you know, to reenact the repealed laws of the UPDF Act, it already states all. There's a reason to why they were repealed. There's a reason to why civilians are not supposed to be tried in general court martials, because general court martials do not offer a fair hearing, you know. I don't really see, because of course there are exceptions, but even saying that they found Dr. Chiza Besigye with firearms is not really enough excuse to be like to hold him in detention up to all this time.
As a member of, since he's retired, and also the penal code of the civilian courts also provides for judging people found with military arms. I find that the agenda of the caucus, I think we shall discuss more that. Maybe you could conclude if you are still.
Oh, no, I just meant to say that people need to wake up from their sleep and see that this is a political matter. If you do not fight for the human rights of one individual, tomorrow it's going to be you, and that same law will not protect you. We are supposed to respect the law. We are supposed to follow the Supreme Court ruling, because that is the highest appellate court in the country, and we are supposed to also fight for the balance of the three arms of government.
Thank you very much. Mike, His Excellency, forgive me. I'm from Her Excellency to His Excellency on the show. I'm really privileged to have leaders of young people where I'm also still one by law. This country has been characterized by history. In 1964, then Prime Minister, His Excellency Apollo Milton Obote, once when he saw he was becoming unpopular in Uganda specifically, he did introduce a general service department that worked as a court to alienate and deal with most of the Luchiko in Uganda, but all people from Uganda who are really trying to depopularize his governance. We have seen that most of our leadership regimes, whenever they become unpopular, they look for tools that help them extend their authority, or tools that act as a shield to people who want to challenge them. Looking at the circumstances, before we dig deeper into the statement that was offered by the Chief Whip of the NRM, that is Honorable Hamson Obua. First of all, as a young person and as a leader, before we reach the intentions why NRM is more interested in seeing that with the many civilian courts that we have and their deficiencies that the country has still not met in terms of facilitation, but also empowering them, especially even in far as education, we see LDCs also still have issues. All that is part of our judicial implementation. Where does this leave first, the issue of trust. That does the organs of government, as she has clearly stated, where does this leave the issue of trust? But with our history, does it leave us to point to see that justification for does it leave any justification for need for this particular court that the president is struggling so much to give significance?
Very good afternoon, Ivan, and good afternoon, viewers. Yeah, I would largely concur with the statement. Reason being, at any particular time or in any nation, where the governance structures and the system itself is crumbling and at the verge of failure, the intent is to culminate more other systems to uphold a failing system that ideally is at the expense of service delivery, of government institutions that are functional, of state functions that are indeed operational. I want to take you back to what has been generational mandates of Uganda right away from independence. There were people like Dr. Milton Obote and the Chiwanukas that were interested with the generational mandate of getting Uganda high independence. That was achieved. The whole conversation of whether they really achieved it front door or back door can be another day, but at least they deserve the credit for that. Then we get into the reign of Idi Amin Dada, where they tell you there is nothing like independence without economic empowerment. The 1971, when we are at the verge of actually assisting UAE with aid, we get into the whole generation of Museveni that tells you independence, economic empowerment, we now need to talk good governance, good leadership, and constitutionalism. Now, when you look at all those things and closely refer to what is happening today, it is clearly characteristical that the system is at the verge of slumber. What is happening with all the proposals to repeal sections of the UPDF Amendment Act? Everyone has pronounced themselves very clearly. It is a constitutional nullity, and everybody has attested to it. That whose birth is actually on the jurisprudential inconsistencies, to the extent that each one of us, whether elite or lay, can truly look at legal excesses and overreaches, yeah, legislative overreaches. But one thing is certainly clear. When you refer to Article 126 of the 1995 Constitution as amended, it will clearly tell you that judicial power is derived from the people, and it is exercised in courts that are established under the same constitution. I want to tell you that whatever proposals, first of all, do not have a safe landing on any perspective. Be it you want to look at the constitutional perspective, you want to look at the governance perspective, you want to look at what the legal precedents have been, and even on the political context. Of course, no one can challenge us on the fact that all this is politically motivated. More so if we're looking at gearing into an electoral period, yeah? It is very, very, very politically motivated. But the other thing would be that the same constitution of the Republic of Uganda, that we all conform to, by the way, by virtue of whether we want or we don't, Article 92 will still clearly point out that Parliament does not have the power to pass any law that is contrary to judgment or ruling of any court. And that is what they are trying to do at the time. Looking at the proposals and the possibility, of course, much later we'll discuss on, with your permission, of course, on what are the possible do's, yeah, for NRM to have, the NRM caucus to have fruitful justifyings of how civilians. Of course, it is a very complicated one, and I would say contrary to common sense, but what we'll be looking at right now is going for a full constitutional amendment, because it is only then that they can add provisions to say certain categories of civilians can be tried under military courts. Not any statutory provision can give them the mandate to do so. Alternatively, Article 273 of the same constitution mandates that they can perhaps go for a referendum organized by the Electoral Commission, so that Ugandans themselves attest, agree and affirm to the fact that we as Ugandans, we have newly accepted that under this categorization, certain civilians can be tried under the court martial. Devoid of that, any ruling, whatever fruits that are coming out of the NRM caucus are really not going to be acceptable. And trust me, once they do, time and again, they are going to be challenged by the Supreme Court. That gets back to the question you asked, Shamim, of whether there is a pull and push between the three arms of government. Yes, there is. The executive versus the judiciary, and the executive versus the legislature. But it is also a very huge test. Trust me. Should the NRM caucus succeed should they succeed in trying to send civilians to the court martial again, it is going to set a very unfortunate and bad precedent for Uganda, that the executive is going to have a lot of cumulative power, to the extent that at any time they feel they can always challenge rulings of court by a new legislation, which direction I wouldn't want us to take as a country.
Thank you very much. Coming back to my sister Shamim, I want to thank Mike because Michael now gives us a direction, especially with the legal backing. But still, Section 119 of the Uganda People's Defense Act of 2005 clearly states who should persons subject to military law. Section H states a person found with possession of military weapons or material that belongs to defense forces. And when we come to the repealed amendments by the NRM caucus, let me read as stated by the government chief whip, Amson Oboa. The caucus unanimously resolved to support the proposed amendments to the UPDF Act presented by the AG. The resolution aligns with the Supreme Court ruling and are based on free broad principles. Military personnel conduct. Serving military personnel will be tried by the military court martial first, with the right to appeal through civilian courts. Civilians with illegal firearms, civilians who acquire specified firearms illegally will be tried by the military court martials first, with the right to appeal through civilian courts. I think the last one was about the education of those who qualify to be judges in the court martial. My question here is, which both of you will have a take, the issue of duplication. When we see our penal code is very clear. It was already established for handling of such appeals. But even already these laws, the sum of the military, the military court is now a disciplinary committee since it was abolished by the Supreme Court ruling, which is the highest court of the land. This tribunal or committee trying to duplicate, should we say it is just taking the similar route the anti-corruption campaign has taken, of seeing the IGG's office to now has been duplicated to brigadiers, to anti-corruption courts, to State House anti-corruption units? Where should we interpret it as Ugandans as a duplication, but or as an aid towards strengthening our justice system?
Well, I don't really see it as a way to strengthen our justice system, really. Because you see, this is kind of a war between human rights and then social justice. Social justice being the side of the NRM, there's obviously something they're trying to protect or something they're trying to depict to us, and they saw that the only way the general court martials can try civilians is through amendment of the Constitution and also reenacting the repealed laws, because the Constitution is clear, and Article 91 gives the Parliament its power to legislate, exercise its duties and make laws. So Article 92 that His Excellency just submitted about clearly states that that there is no law that can be made to alter the decision that has been made by a court. Clearly, the Supreme Court, which is actually the highest, appellate court in the country. And I also feel like even if they wanted to really amend the Constitution to pass on their interests, because from the beginning we said that the UPDF Act is there to regulate the military personnel, soldiers, Uganda People's Defense Forces. So these are individuals who have actually not been in defense forces, or if you are to give an example of Dr. Chiza Besigye, who is retired, he is no longer a member of the what? Of the military. He is a civilian, he is just a citizen of the country. But I even think that even though they were to amend it, we have a law that says that you cannot actually exercise, okay, like if they passed a law today, if I did a crime yesterday, that law does not apply to me. Because by the time by the time I was as committing the crime, there was no law that that can hold me liable. So I think this is not even a matter of Dr. Besigye or Aaron Chiza or other political prisoners that are there right now, because the law has pronounced itself clear. The Supreme Court ruling is very clear. This is even the NRM caucus is trying to set a law that will even act even after all this, drama. And I feel like, okay, it is, yes, a move to me. They want to protect their power, but it also, they are trying to show the people that the executive actually has the power, more than the judiciary and the legislature. And they're trying to intimidate, other political, people with other interests, and especially the how do they call them, the opposing, NOP, all the others, So they are trying to show you that actually we are going to put this law so that tomorrow when we have any other excuse to hold you accountable, you saw General Muhoozi going into NOP offices, parading this Bobby Wine's home. So tomorrow, if they find you with a gun, they will actually have the liberty to just take you to the General Court Martial and take you to court and, detain you for the rest of your life. So I feel like this is just, we need to see it in a way that they're trying to take away the liberty of these political opponents. Yeah? And the fact that we're actually going into elections, I don't know why the NRM does not see it as something that is actually going to deteriorate, like it's going to reduce people's interests in their manifesto, because we know the NRM is there for socio-economic development, for patriotism, for Pan-Africanism. So today, if you are trying to say that just a normal civilian who is not provided for in the UPDF Act, except for the exceptions that have been given of a civilian who has been caught with firearms illegally, which has actually not really been happening. I can ask you for 10 examples of civilians that have been tried in general court martials because they've been caught with firearms, and you cannot even, apart from those that the government had political interests in. Yeah. So it is very clear that it is politically motivated, and it is unfortunate because it poses a very big threat to a normal civilian out there, because tomorrow you will support a specific political party, and then you will just suffer for it. You've seen the newspaper that was saying that how did it state it? That there's a very, very big burden to fighting for the freedom of Uganda. Just as an individual who wants to fight for your rights, who wants to fight for democracy, who wants to fight for freedom, you will have to pay a very, very big price for the freedom of Uganda. And that is very unfortunate, because a country that has democracy as one of its values the ruling government at first did not really allow people to be affiliated to political parties, but later it was like, okay, it's okay, anyone can choose a political party to be affiliated to. That is democracy. So why should you pay a price for being affiliated to a specific political party? It does not make sense. And I feel like, of course, everyone knows it, but to a certain extent, they cannot do really something big about it. How many times has the president been so influential in amending a certain, we have laws we have certain sections of the constitution that have been up for debate, for amendment for a very long time, and nothing has been done. So when you say something like just a UPDF Act, making the president and all, the NRM caucus fighting so hard just to, reenact such laws, it shows something. It shows the fight for power. And it shows where the country is going if people do not really try to act on it and see that it is important, because we have so many political prisoners, we have so many families that are suffering because their family members have been detained illegally. We have the Supreme Court that is trying to exercise its power, but it cannot. We have the parliament that has made itself clear. But we only have one problem, and that is, I could say, the ruling government, indirectly or directly, because maybe to some people they cannot see it. But if you are, even he said that the literate and the illiterate can see it. If you know the law, then you know that even if they amended the constitution, Article 92 of the 1995 constitution does not allow them, which means that their amendment is going to be null and void, If a Supreme Court ruling has made itself clear, you cannot amend a law or enact a law that goes against the Supreme Court ruling. So which means that their only solution is amending, but it might also not really be as reliable as they think. Then the other issue, there's a general principle that says that you are not supposed to really amend the critical or essential sections of the Constitution, especially those that have something to do with separation of powers. Yeah, but you can see that this is a clear war between the three arms of government. So they will try, but it depicts a lot of us as a country.
I've learned a lot. Thanks you for clearly exhausting the question. His Excellency, Mike, for the years I've known you as an advocate for the rule of law. Key issues that our sister really puts very clear is priority. Was this the biggest priority as a country that we needed to see that in the current challenges the country is facing? Appeal was the most burning amendment that we needed to our constitution. But still, to the question I first posed, the question of duplication, the question of deficiency and inefficiency such laws cause to the existing system. The question of independence was widely answered, but the intentions really, I think, deny us, because when you read the Honorable Amson Oboa's intentions, like we have stated, civilians, I think the only one that they try to bring is appealing to the civilian court. But how effective is it that you're creating an extra court at a cost for Ugandans in terms of cost, but also a court that is limited to supervision of a person who can be a UPDF commander when he has no law background? So previously, why it was unfit for purpose is because even a good affiliate in the UPDF would become its judge. Even the greatest cook, once you reach the rank of brigadier general, for being the best chef, you would automatically qualify to be a judge. So, shed for us more about the issue of priority. Is it priority that in part of the issues that we feel the NRM caucus as a ruling government should prioritize? How is beneficial is this to the country? But also come back to our question of duplication. Thank you. Can take over.
Madam Moderator, I think it would be very honest of me to say that as a country, the statement is quite realistic, though ironical, that we do so well in misguiding priorities. We really do so well. Refer to the 1995 Constitution still, as amended, that any law in the land that contradicts to whatever extent with the supreme law, which is the 1995 Constitution, is null and void to the extent to which it contradicts. So people can paraphrase and duplicate and so and say a lot of stuff, but we are looking at a Supreme Court ruling and judgment that was passed. That is final. That is final. So you telling me you're going to get back to the UPDF Act as amended 2024 and try to touch here and there to justify purpose is really not reasonable. Councillor Shamim here says the NRM could be trying to cling to power. I beg to differ.
He has already clinged to
yes,
power.
Yes, I beg to
NRM
differ.
is making 40 years next
I beg
year.
to differ from that kind of thinking because when you say NRM is clinging to power, it is somehow a polite statement that justifies state role number one. Because state role number one is that state must cling into power. Any government, priority number one is stay in government, stay in leadership. So somehow that justifies, of course, on the positive and the negative side. What they are trying to do is to legalize illegalities. And the entire vulgarization of the judiciary and legislation, I mean, it is very sad and unfortunate. But for me, what echoes out strongly is the governance question. Where we are at, you would refer to it as a simulacra. A simulacra means that things would appear legitimate on the surface. But when you begin to look at the governance structures and the actual realities, it is an illusion. And a simulacra is normally going to come with a kleptocracy. A kleptocracy means that, one, government institutions are deliberately failed. And at the surface, they will show you how they're trying to reshuffle, do away with institutions that are not operational. They are so much interested in the rule of law, and they show you how they want to amend and often refer to the Constitution. But in reality, they're doing the contrary. That normally carries a huge bag of mismanagement of people, mismanagement of funds, mismanagement of resources, and the state acting like what is important at the time is for them to cling to power. Trust me, they fling and imping anything to ensure that at the end of the day, it is their interests that are being catered for. Getting back to whoever is part of the NRM caucus, these are people that never learn. People that never learn. Each time you are part of a legislation of an oppressive law, you really must have a lay understanding that when oppression comes, it does not differentiate between you and them. What it simply does is oppress. There have been so many scenarios, quite a number of scenarios, where they have still caucused. And you see, when you look at what is the academic meaning of a caucus and the modus operandi that must be taken, you realize these ones now go for a lecture with the head of state to give them instructions on what exactly they must do, blindly, unknowingly, or intentionally or unintentionally. For me, it is not. I wouldn't consider it a caucus. Because in a caucus, we are coming to opinionate, to say things just the way they are, a two-way traffic of this will work, this will not work, we can do this, this is not doable. But in circumstances where you get into a caucus to pick one-line front-headed instructions, for example, you guys know about the Public Order Management Act of 2013?
Yeah.
They caucused put it into play, and the federal search caucus were properly beaten, referring to the same. We get into 2017, that was the removal of the presidential age limit. They still caucused for the same, and many of them have severely felt it. The Honorable Muhammad Insereko brought in the Computer Misuse Act of 2022, and many of them that are loudmouth like I am discovered at this trend we are going to be in trouble, and they started to refrain. Now, very recently in 2023, if you've been following, we've had the controversial VAT on SACCO savings. They focused, drove them into acceptance. Many of them are members of SACCOs. They borrow a lot of money for their campaigns and whatever sort of business, and they're victimized by the same. It is simple. If they ever...
The famous coffee bill that has left me a poor man.
So sorry about that. But getting back conclusively, if they ever look at legislation to serve the purpose it is meant for, they ideally must understand that political dynamics will often shift. And trust me, they will. If they do not exonerate us, time is going to exonerate us, and everybody is going to be victimized, is going to feel the wrath of it. And Ivan, this is not even about Dr. Besigye and Aaron Kiza. Those two are only a sample of hundreds, maybe thousands, because it is very clear on who is tried, when they are tried, people disappear before you know, court-martial. Whether dead or alive, whatever happens next, you cannot tell. That makes us look at the whole point of precedence. We are going to set a very, very, very bad and unfortunate precedence. And you know what is left for each one of us tomorrow? Remember the time of President Ali Bongo? Make noise, make noise, make noise. A dictator that had mastered the artery of organizing sham elections and governing the country the way he wants. Time came, and he was on social media telling people to make noise, and those he was telling to make noise were quiet. So this is simply the same. It is okay, get into your NRM caucus, propose whatever amendments that you want, but well knowing that right now you could be thinking yourself, but it is delusional immunity. It really does not exist, and it will get to you.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Michael. Before we go to our break, maybe Shamim, could you have anything to add on?
No, I also, he talked about the public order, you know, and we the other day were debating about it, and we were like, these are laws that were made in the times of slave trade, when they really wanted everyone to go to work as immediately as they can. So when they would be passing by and they see you, you know, lingering around, they would be like, what are you doing here? And then they would beat you, and you know. But currently, these laws are actually made, I don't know, you know, like, the whole idea is maybe to ensure a peaceful environment, but they just want to get specific people. And we were talking about this you know, what is it? Or, you know, like when you want to riot, but you want to peacefully, you know, peacefully demonstration. It has its provision of the Constitution. You know, it has its rules, especially like doctors. We know that you actually have to tell the specific people that 9 months before that we're actually going to demonstrate peacefully, because you've not paid us our salaries, you've not done this and this and this. But even after you followed the proper procedures of peaceful demonstrations, you will still be beaten up and, you know, manhandled and everything. Why? Because of the public order management that everyone clearly, you know,
let's go for a break, and we shall resume our discussion from that point. Thank you very much.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from our break. We parted at a point where we were discussing the contradictions that such appeals or appellants by caucuses that are guided with political motives cause towards the law itself. The law is meant to be independent and blind, whereas our politicians have decided to create the lost judicial decade for Uganda, where they have tried to give our laws eyes in the last couple of, I think of the last 20 years, because there have been more amendments in the last 10, 15 years than the entire 50 years since independence. First coming to you, Her Excellency Shamim, the contradictions that the NRM caucus is causing the Ugandans, especially given that it is a regime unlike Amini's regime that could be really accused of having a leader who was not highly educated or who was more of ignorant, but still he tried and appointed a lot of people who were highly qualified in his first government to see that he causes the equilibrium for his intellectual inabilities. Looking at the controversies and contradictions such amendments cause, where do you see the future of Supreme Court decisions in this country?
Thank you so much. Once again, good afternoon to our listeners. And I will dive into the topic immediately. When I see our future, especially when it comes to the rule of law, and the judiciary and the constitution and every other laws that are being enacted on a daily, I see that it is going to be very unfortunate for us. Personally, as a fourth year law student, every day when I see certain, things that are happening in society, I even get demotivated, because previously you knew a lawyer as someone who solves your problem. You knew the law as a refuge to, societal problems. There's a dispute, the alternative, the only solution used to be, let's go to court. But currently, you will know that even when you go to court, 99% is there's a lot of backlog at court. It takes a lot of time. It is very expensive. There's a lot of corruption, So that has been very clear. There are certain cases that have not been successful because there is influence of the executive, or there's influence, of the parliament. Now, when we come to even the judiciary itself not even being able to make decisions, especially these, judges, the one that we all have trust in, the one that we believe are very, very literate, they know what they're doing, they know the law. If they can also reach an extent of making decisions, but they are not followed by the government, it really gives a very, 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 very stained picture to the, to the society.
I think the general public interprets
they're not going to have trust in the judiciary again, They're not going to have trust in the parliament if the speaker, I grew up knowing the previous speaker, Right Honorable Rebecca Kadaga. If he used to believe in her, he used to just want to be her role model, you just wanted to be in her shoes. But if Right Honorable Anita Among can stand up in Parliament and say something like, why hasn't the government released the people? And everyone is just looking at them like, I was seeing that parliamentary session, and they were talking and one of the MPs was talking about Article 92, that even if they amend the Constitution, it is going to be null and void. Even if they amend the UPDF Act, sorry, it's going to be null and void, because there has already been a court ruling against, you know, that same section. And everyone was quiet. She was just, and there's a way it makes you lose hope in the future. As a law student, as just a society that does not even know the law, you will clearly see that the ruling party has so much powers, you know. We can even see that from the tweets that are on X every morning, you know, by just one military official who is, yes, actually big in the military, but why do you have to intimidate the people, you know? Why can't you let people have their freedom? Why can't you exercise and settle disputes legally? Because that is what the law is there for. So as a law student, as a lawyer, as a civilian, as a citizen of the country, I see that we are going into hard times. And like they said, that political dynamics change, but the law stays there. Today, if you wake up and you put, the parliament puts up a bill, it is taken to the president, then he assents to it, it is taken back to the parliament. The moment that law is passed, it is there to stay, you see, which is why now they are trying to amend, they do amendments here and here and here, but the law will hold you accountable even after 50 years, you know. So you currently an MP of the NRM, tomorrow, if they vote you out, you will also be a victim of the same law that you passed because you were trying to be part of an NRM caucus. So I hope that the people who are part of the caucus can really actually wake up and know that tomorrow they are going to be accountable to the same law. They're going to go back to that same court, you know. And the fact that even political dynamics change, it is, we are not immortal. You're going to die tomorrow, you know. The current ruling party could be out tomorrow, especially with all that has been happening, with all the trust that people have lost in them. Previously, it used to be, people used to think, okay, yes, there's democracy to some extent, but people never used to see the extent to which there is dictatorship in this country. Because our president is one that is going to say, do not do this, then tomorrow he'll change his mind. It's like, okay, let's just, you know, he has, he's strategic. He has a political mindset. And currently, it is actually becoming clear, you know, the mist is getting out, and people are like, oh, okay, so this man was a dictator all along. He just didn't say it directly. But with all that is happening, we can see that the future is very uncertain, especially for those that wanted to really emphasize the rule of law, those that fight for democracy, those that fight for human rights. I am a fourth-year law student, so we normally have these discussions. We actually had this debate of what it would look like if the different non-governmental organizations in the country decide to take these gross human rights violations to the UN, you know, the Human Rights Council. So we had the state, then we had an NGO, then we had the Human Rights Council. And we were trying to see what could really be the problem. Why doesn't the state want to release these people, you know? Why does the state want to try these people in civilian courts? So we also had these NGOs fighting, like, it is a violation of our, you know, human rights, is a violation of the Constitution. And we realized that, I don't even know why, I don't know if they have taken it to the Human Rights Council or anything, but I also feel like we can solve it as a state, one by citizens knowing that they have the right, you know, to fight. They have the right to be aware of what they should fight for, what they stand for. And this starts with, number one, human rights. It starts with the rule of law, and it also starts with certain provisions of the Constitution that are not supposed to be touched, beginning with Article 92 that provides for amendment of certain sections or laws being passed that alter the decisions of the Supreme Court ruling.
Thank you very much, Shamim. Basically, as a person on the show, I'm really privileged that he has also given me a lot of learning, but a lot of exposure with the contradiction certain acts in this country cause towards the state. His Excellency Mike, my question comes to the legislation. She did mention she got interest in Parliament when the Right Honorable Kadaga was the Speaker. I think me had followed the Right Honorable Edward II, Catholic Mukwano Gwabanji, who was the Speaker then for the previous 10 years, who had replaced the late Ayume as the Speaker who was there in the early 2000s. Looking at issues of law, issues of legislation, we have discussed a lot, but we look to be having a parliament that has no brain. This appealing or appealant of the Supreme Court decision is just one of the avenues that shows the NRM caucus has become an extension of the executive in legislation, but not a representation of the people. Share with us, where do you think the future of the legislature lies in the life of Ugandans, but also in seeing that it be the yardstick for setting up, for defending the laws that were set by the same house?
For starters, why does everyone seem shocked by the fact that the executive is overriding the legislature and judiciary? Because that is what it has been over time. And right about now, it is shocking that everybody seems to be in tantrums and saying a lot of things, frustrated and shocked. That is what it has been. Our government today has garnered expertise and mastery in what I would call political sabotage. You know a country that is governed on ransom? This country has owners. A clique of owners that will often say statements like Twarwana, and they think that everything must resonate with their opinion and must go according to their own way. Equally, that things must be done the way they think they should be done, without considering what other opinions are and what other available alternatives. The future of the legislature, I have over time believed that the legislature has been a joke. Good enough that scenarios like these ones unmask, so that everybody gets to the technical nitty-gritties of understanding what the legislature is capable of, store it away from what is the expectation, and on the right end, what is the expectation and what are they delivering. Of course, it says a lot on first, our education system. Secondly, a bold pronunciation of which people do we send to parliament to legislate. From the education system, built on the fact that, you know, it is important for one to remember than to think. Any academician on any good day would clearly urge you out that even after university, one that has been to the level of university and graduated in the Ugandan context, their thinking is still not very clear and not reliable for decision making.
So our education
Then there is you that tells me to avoid a senior 6C, you're fit to be a member of parliament. Jokery. Jokery. Legislating over things that you don't have technicality over. Legislating over things that you really do not understand. I wouldn't say the future is uncertain. It is very certain. We should not hide from factual realities. What is on the left? Should the NRM caucus succeed in re-enacting the repealed sections of the UPDF Act, then you know very certainly that the executive can always have a new legislation to meet any court ruling or judgment. That is very certain. On the other hand, it is for the first time that we have had the Supreme Court pronounce themselves strongly, very boldly and unequivocally to say this is our stand, and a stand that is against that of the executive. That is why on the 31st, when the Supreme Court pronounced itself, on my Twitter handle I was quick to say this is applaudable, but one would wonder whether it is stage managed like all the rest, or it is the start of a judicial upholding of the rights of civilians. Now, what happens if the NRM caucus fails? Every Ugandan, those that are bold enough like me to say it, and many of them that are shy to say, lost trust in the judiciary and in the legislature, even in the executive. They only have no alternative. This is our country, and we are stuck here. We all must think of alternatives. But should the NRM caucus fail to reenact appeal sections, then at least we know that we can count on the judiciary. For how long, that is another question that probably we'll be talking about another day. Then the other thing would to be talked about would be the separation of powers. Now, you need to get back. You need to get back on influence, because right now what we are talking about is military influence versus civilian oversight. You're talking about the judiciary headed by the Chief Justice. How does the Chief Justice come into play? Because any appointment is subject to conditionality. And in the political realm, conditionalities that are subject purely on interest. So we need to get back to discussing the independence of the judiciary, who becomes Chief Justice, and how do you expect people to be independent when they were appointed? In fact, shamelessly today they even have to say things like, the Supreme Court pronounced itself, but you have to consult the Attorney General. Consulting over what?
The law is very clear.
Everything is very clear. Secondly, civilians have also got to take charge of their mandate. The civilians are entrusted with who they send to parliament. When you send dogs, they will bark. When you send cows, they will mow. When you send cats, they will mew. And the reverse is true. We really have to be very, very considerate. And of course, Norbert Mao has alluded before that, the Honorable Norbert Mao has alluded before, that the only time a civilian is not a slave is on the voting day. Because it is then that they have the authority and mandate to depict what happens tomorrow. Only then. After, you are simply a slave and you abide. Now, all these are gearing political pressure and extensions. As we dive into the election, citizens must equally be charged and take many of these scenarios as direct and live examples. Because trust me, for the future of Uganda, for many of us that do not have an alternative home except this one, we must start with one redefinition. To redefine what constitutionalism is, you cannot say that, you see, we are observing the rule of law and organizing periodic elections without looking at the substance. An election where people are beaten, embarrassed, an election that is filled with madcap and many unfortunate things, and of course you are justifying it. The political parties themselves also owe us a lot in this conversation. Because now the prevalence of political parties is simply a kind reminder that, you see, multipartyism is also a good sign of democracy.
Growth in democratic
and political growth. Now, when you look at the facts, political parties that you curtail, political parties whose leaders you want to, you're always amending here and there to make sure you oppress them properly and rightly. Now, everybody has got to have a stand in all this. And they should not tell you the future is uncertain. We know what is on the left and we know what is on the right. The onus is completely on us to choose what we want. The people must take interest in the national matters of their country. Because if we don't, we are headed for disaster. While other people secure their future, claiming they are securing yours too, we need to redefine the future and talk governance. What should governance be like? What must our institutions be like? What must our state functions be like? And agree that certain things have got to change over time. Uganda is not what it was in the 1980s. We are in 2025 and we have got to adopt, but adopt positively and rightly.
Thank you very much. Wow, that was quite interesting. Shamim, there has been increased militarization. I think that has even led to President justifying his need to have a military court martial, also be all over the place like he always likes doing. It is common for popularistic politicians to do things that make them look justifiable as popular, even when unpopular. It is also common that when you over-militarize politics, other people challenging you will also try to want to identify themselves militarily, like you have seen members of the National Unity Platform, because it gives them a balance in the population that they also have capacity. There is a famous Luganda saying which says, some will begin planting flowers not knowing they will attract bees. And yet bees are a bit controversial. As we go into our last segment, the issue of militarization, because the law clearly states where the UPDF should operate from, the roles and responsibilities of the UPDF. But even the current debate of saying that a UPDF tribunal or disciplinary committee of a force has become an issue of national consumption. Do we think that the country is overlooking what is at hand, but ignoring going back to the principle that first of all, even the UPDF as a force is designated to operate from a certain office and line of operation?
Thank you so much. You talked about militarization. It is really, really very important. The government released, the parliament released a budget, last year, and it was a very big topic of debate because institutions like the UPDF were taking so much money, so much money. The president himself moves with like around how many cars? 20, sometimes
over
15,
20.
sometimes, I'm telling you. So you see how much money is invested in the military on a daily. And that is not even actually only an issue of Uganda. African countries, they invest in security so much. Why? Because they feel like their throne is threatened on a daily basis, which is one. Two, as a country that is democratic, I don't see why politics should be militarized, you know. I don't see why you have to bring the UPDF to rotate a polling station on the voting day. I don't see why. There are certain places that you actually go there and they're full of the military. Currently, there are roads that are full of the military from morning to evening, and they have to be financed, they have to eat, they have to, you know. So the politics has been militarized because the government feels like there's a threat, you know, to them having power. They feel like they're being invaded, but they forget that power belongs to the people. The people are the ones that vote the president. It means that they have the right to vote him out, just as it applies to any other, you know, any other political personnel, whether it's MP, whether it is a student leader. Students, if you're like a guild president, students vote you into power, they have the right to, you know, vote you out. And that is how it is supposed to be. You don't see countries like the USA having so many, you know, they don't militarize their politics because they know it is a matter of the polling station. That is what, you know, determines who rules and who does not. And when it comes to that, we also have to see one of the important issues in the country that we're actually facing, which is the politics of the society currently has been monetarized, you know. It is a matter of who has more money. It's a matter of why should I vote you, what are you going to give me? And the fact that they actually know that when you're put into power, you're not really going to put, you know, a significant change. So they want to benefit from you before you actually enter power, because they know that once you're pronounced a member of parliament of, let's say, Mbara district, you will not do anything for them, yeah? So they make sure that when you're being voted into power, if he meets you, he will get that 50,000 out of you. Then you will know that, hey, Odi Yampa, you know? Hey. So it is very, very unfortunate, because in the legal context, in the normal context, power belongs to the people. The Constitution states itself clear. And politics is not supposed to be militarized. It's not a matter of the UPDF. The UPDF is just there to ensure that we have peace and security, you know, in society. And it has actually become worse that currently the UPDF are the ones that are actually beating people in society. The other day I saw a video on Twitter, and it was from a lady from Munyonyo who was crying that she was beaten up by, you know, a certain military person because the president was about to pass, and they told them to go out of the road. Then for her, she went to the parking lot. So they found her there and they beat her. But it used to be different, and it's supposed to be different. We're supposed to feel very safe around the military. We're supposed to feel safe around the police, but it has become the contrary, because they are manhandling civilians, they're abusing civilians. Let me tell you, I used to know the UPDF as the most disciplined body. Most disciplined, because even actually, and I feel like they're disciplined inside, but they're not disciplined to civilians. They don't respect civilians, not knowing that our taxes are the ones that feed them. They are the ones, you know. Yeah, so it's not a good thing, and we are hoping for change, but we are the ones that are supposed to bring the change.
Have the men in uniform turned Ugandans into their biggest enemy as we conclude the show?
I would say yes. Whether or not it is intentional can be a subject of historicity. But the biggest challenge here is what is supposed to be a country army, what is supposed to be a state army, where you and I and the rest of the other Ugandans take pride, has been turned into a personal army. The army has been personalized, and personalized to the extent of getting politicized as well. I'm telling you, the hotspot areas in this country where you will not win an election unless the army is on your side. So it is the army in politics, it is the army doing this and that.
Making roads.
Whether they intend to or on order, that can be a subject for another day. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But what we need to do right now is Uganda must get back her army. How? That is a very lengthy discussion that we'll need to delve into when we have the time. Secondly, the army must refrain from direct involvement in politics, because it has a mandatory role to play for each one of us, regardless of whether in government or not. But you cannot have an army where that feels like it is important to protect those in power against those they lead. You cannot have an army that is used to oppress, to degrade and rob those it is supposed to be protecting. An army that guarantees security. And one applaudable fact is there has been a tremendous improvement, I must say, on the light note. However, when these tremendous improvements on the UPDF and the force entirely, now questions arise on the usage, the purpose, and the mandate. That is where big questions really arise. But conclusively, we all must understand that where a governance structure or a system looks like a conspiracy to rob, oppress, degrade its own people, The absurd truth is volcanic fury will often erupt, not because anyone plans it or anybody fuels it, but it is last man's option to safeguard survival. Yes, safeguarding survival or their existence. On what the interplay of the army can be in whatever sector, it must be really a liberal approach. Not look at the who. What is important to look at is the what. Look at the substance rather than the form. And trust me, if we can head in that direction, then it would be a good way to harmonize and proceed forward as a country.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Nkwanga Micheal. Your parting statements to the viewers as we close.
Our esteemed viewers must really understand that every generation is entrusted with a mandate, with the fulfillment of a vision, and with the power of thought and with the power of doing. Certainly, we are charged on who we accept to get into leadership or governance positions. We are charged with who we entrust with our society, with our funds, and with our resources. The biggest challenge this country has is its people. When you send people that are not worth it to parliament, we get into situations like this. So as we gear into the general election, we must be fully charged, very much alert and critically.
I will invite you here once again on issues of election. Coming to you, Her Excellency Shamim Akampurira. First of all, I'm very privileged. Thank you for making it to the show. We really appreciate as young people for your contribution and guidance, especially on legal matters. Your parting shots.
Thank you so much, dear listeners. My parting remarks will be to the citizens. We all see what is happening, but it is upon us to create the change. And this will start by taking an initiative to gain interest in politics. Just know what is happening in your country and be knowledgeable. Gain interest in certain things like the constitution, like the bills that are being passed. And two, take part in leadership. You're a young person, you feel like it is not really important to vote, but voting wrongly or not voting is why we are here in the first place. So take upon those leadership positions, be active in leadership, be active in your society. You can create a certain change. Then lastly, I want to inform all citizens of the country that it is, you need to be aware of your rights. Know your rights, know your entitlements from the state and from the society, so that you will not be manipulated, so that you will not find yourself being a victim of a certain issue, which you wouldn't be suffering only if you knew what your human rights are. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. It has been another young, youthful, energetic and loving afternoon with a panel of great leaders for the young people in our country. We want to appreciate our technical team, our production team, Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV for having us here. See you again next Wednesday afternoon, same time, same place. Thank you.